But we are here on our way to Belgium, to the museum, get some history of the maps, to figure out some more about, you know, what went down. And we know sowieso already that we are Israelites, but the more information you got, the better. As the old folks say, you can never know too much. So that's about it. I'm here with Opa, or I would like to call him Soldier Beer, or I would like to call him
Most Plus, enjoying the trip, go to Belgium, seek some more of our history, see if we can come up with some more information to help our people.
So y'all can see we are on the freeway on our way to Belgium, to the museum.
Belgium people drive like they're crazy.
Yeah, you can say that for true. You know, to the museum to get some more understanding about history about Congo and so. So with this, peace out. Y'all gonna see us when we reach there.
Just give you a brief introduction to our map collection. The African Museum has two map collections.
Okay.
One map collection which is huge and comprises about 20,000 maps is the collection of the Geology Department.
Geology.
And most of those maps are modern maps, because geology is a science which was developed only really in the 20th century.
Okay.
But that geology department is somewhere else.
I forget, what's the study of geology again exactly?
Of the soil, of the soil, of the earth,
Okay.
and of what the earth contains.
Okay, the elements and so.
Today this is of great importance, because especially for the Congo, because the Congo is extremely rich in natural products like copper and iron and diamonds and gold and so on. And the geologists are the specialists who are in a position to find these precious
elements,
natural materials in the ground. If you walk around, you can't see that, but they know. And they have maps.
Okay.
And today the maps are very important because they help to find more than is exploited today.
Okay.
So that's the biggest collection that we have. Our collection is very much more modest. We have about 300 to 400, or it depends how you count them, of what I call ancient maps from the Renaissance,
300 to 400
from about 1500 to the First World War.
Okay.
And we have about 3,000 more modern maps, which are from the time of the Congo, when the Congo was a Belgian colony, and these are essentially administrative maps, showing the sectorized, showing the different divisions for administrative purposes, showing the different ethnic groups, showing the transport possibilities and things like that. They are, for me, useful maps, but not very interesting, not very attractive.
Okay.
The older maps, as you will see, are artistically quite attractive. And of course, the older maps are of great interest, especially to the historians and to map collectors, because they contain so many so many enigmas, so many unresolved problems, because at the time people knew very little, especially about Africa. As you may perhaps remember from your history lesson, the first time that a Portuguese sailor arrived at the southern tip of Africa, in South Africa, was in 1488.
Okay.
But he didn't go further because it was a long trip already from Portugal to the south, and his crew refused to go further because they were afraid of the dangers, and so he had to return. It was only in 1498, 10 years later, that Vasco da Gama managed to circumnavigate Africa completely and to go to India.
Vasco da Gama, was that the first guy that went? Did he go again, or is that another guy?
No. He went. He was the first to go to India via South Africa, and he did a second voyage afterwards.
Also, it's the same guy that did both voyages.
Yes, but 1498 is some 6 years after Columbus went to your region. Was the first time that Europeans arrived by boat, by ship, sailing boat, around Africa in India.
Okay.
So, I will show you a brief selection of some of the older maps, some specimens, and I will then show you a little book which I have published in 2017, which contains a description of 80 old maps, 80 old maps, and what is...
Would that book be up for sale? Can I have
it? Yes, it is in the... have you been to visit the museum?
No, not me. This is my first time.
I did, but
it's available in the bookshop. But if you're interested, I have one for sale here. And the interesting thing is, I will show you that if you might be interested, that, permit me, that at the end of the book, it's now in my computer, is a DVD, which shows all the maps in detail. I will give you a demonstration later.
Okay.
And you can even go through some atlases and turn the pages, page by page, and so on. So if you want that.
So when you buy the book, you get the DVD also with it?
It's in it, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Okay.
And you can. I'll give you a demonstration.
Okay.
So let us start with some of the oldest maps. We have. Stay there. This is North Africa. This is Spain here, Gibraltar, and Tanga in North Africa. This is the Atlantic coast here and the Mediterranean. And this is the first of 3 maps of Africa, according to Ptolemy. The first of a series of 3 maps, yes.
So is this the original paper?
This is an original map, yes. It was printed in 1535. Original.
And this was by the Ptolemy, the guy that was a Roman, right?
No, he was in Alexandria. He was a Greek. Ptolemy in the 2nd century of our era, in the 2nd century, he was an astronomer, he was a geographer, a cartographer, and he wrote the first description of the world that we know in such detailed terms, and he indicated in one of the chapters how to make maps.
And how would he exactly base what geography, like what continent looks like what island looks like what? How would he do that?
He relied on previous travelers' reports. All these areas here, you see, this is the continuation. Here is Tunis, and then here is Egypt. Can you see?
Oh, Egypt.
Yeah. Okay. All this area here, the northern part of Africa, was Roman. The Romans were there. They had their colonies there.
When they beat Hannibal Barca, right?
They had it.
When they defeated Hannibal Barca?
That's right. Yes.
Punic War.
Correct. Yes. Quite correct in Carthage. And so the area was relatively well known from travel reports and from the Romans, but the rest of Africa here is totally unknown.
Oh.
You see, that's totally unknown, and we will see a little bit more later. So these areas, as they were Roman provinces, they were quite well known, but the rest, no. Now, this was in 1535.
Okay.
As I've mentioned to you, Vasco da Gama, at the end of the 15th century, had already gone around Africa, so they knew the coast of Africa to the south and a bit in the east. They knew the coast. But at that time, they relied very much on Ptolemy still. However,
One quick question.
Yeah.
Concerning like the little ridges and so that you see at the edges of the map and so, how would they figure that out? Would they figure it out by sailing and?
Well,
because that would be a lot of sailing.
at the time of Ptolemy, you see, these maps were constructed according to the instructions of Ptolemy of the 2nd century. So they are historical maps, if you like. They do not correspond to the reality in 1535.
Oh, okay.
We come to that. Ptolemy was very much honored by geographers and people who made maps because he was supposed to be an authority. However, people had progressively become aware of Africa looking differently. And the same cartographer added in the atlas,
Ethiopia.
added to these old maps the first visions of modern maps. Here is Africa, and here is West Africa, with Guinea round down to the Gulf of Guinea here, which had been explored by the Portuguese sailors. The sailors were in the coast, but inland it was empty and they knew nothing, or very little.
So these are all Portuguese names, if you look at them.
Yeah.
They're all Portuguese.
Yeah.
Libya.
So that is the first modern map that was added to show that we know better at the time than Ptolemy said.
And this was by whom?
By Fries,
And what time? What was the year time?
1535.
1535. And Ptolemy was what time?
Ptolemy was the
14
200 after Christ.
200
Oh.
AD. Okay.
200 AD, yeah.
Okay.
Whoa.
So that's the first modern map of West Africa as it is. And he added another map, which is a modern map of South Africa. As you can see, the coast is relatively so-called relatively well known, but the interior is full of monsters and snakes and dragons and things
Yeah,
like
I
that.
see it.
That's imagination. And here are the famous mountains of the moon,
Mountains of
which
the Moon.
which are
Can you explain?
are said. Sorry.
Can you explain the mountains of the moon?
Yes, I will explain. In antiquity, the people knew the Nile River.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Nile River,
Yeah.
which goes into the Mediterranean. They knew it from the Egyptians already. And they knew that every year the Nile was flooding. You remember that. And the floods came from interior of Africa. They didn't know exactly from where. And there was the story that in the interior of Africa there were huge mountains so high that they had snow on top. And in certain parts of the year, certain months of the year, the snow was melting into Egypt.
Yeah.
In other parts of the year, no. And so the story of the mountains of the moon, mountains that reach up to the moon, was created, with the source rivers becoming the Nile from the melting snow.
Okay.
And this notion of the mountains of the moon has persisted for centuries because people didn't know better. When they finally, in the 19th century, went into Central Africa, they discovered mountains that were very, very high and had snow on top, like Kilimanjaro
realize it was real.
and Ruwenzori in Burundi. And therefore, they said, yes, there is some truth in this old story. The people at that time didn't really know where these mountains were and how they looked and how high they were, but they exist.
But I have a question then. How would they just think out of thin air that they would have mountains here? Where did this idea stem from?
Well,
It had to have an origin.
The Nile being known and observed as a big river, it must come from somewhere.
Correct.
And it must have a source somewhere.
Correct.
And as the Nile was inundating parts of the country at certain times of the year and other times not, it was considered that, knowing that the sun was very, very hot in the summertime, it must have been melting snow, because they couldn't imagine this rise of the river otherwise. You see? So these are the first
Before you put
modern
these
maps.
away,
Yeah.
I see the little kings here on most of these maps.
Yes,
What
yes.
would these kings be?
Well, they are. It is believed that there are the chiefs of the tribes and kings of certain kingdoms. This is here the so-called Prester John. He was supposed to be a Christian king in Abyssinia. We will see him later.
His name is John what?
Pardon?
John? I'm not seeing
Prester
John.
John, the priest John, priest King John.
Okay.
Quila Rigam, that's what I'm
No,
saying.
yes, but he
Different
is
language.
connected to Kilwa, which is a place here on the coast, Kilwa, as the kingdom of Kilwa. In reality, he belongs to Ethiopia, which is not far from there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And these rest as well?
And the others are just imaginary people. Has been. You see, when these Portuguese travelled around the coast and they landed with their ships on the coast, they were told, "Oh yes, there's a big kingdom inside the land," but they never went there, of course,
But
until much later.
Oh, but then how would they know if it's imaginary?
Well, the Portuguese heard that such a king existed, but they'd never seen him and never had any proof. So they put him like that on the map, and it was later shown that it was not correct.
How so?
Huh?
How so?
Well, because later on, in the 19th century, when they went inland and discovered the real situation, they discovered that a king like that didn't exist. That's the way it is. Yeah. Okay. So, at the end of the 16th century, in 1570 or thereabouts, a Flemish map maker published the first modern atlas, and he was the first to produce detailed maps or regional maps of Africa, in addition to the continental map.
And what would his name be? The Flemish? What was his name?
Ortelius, Abraham Ortelius.
Abraham Ortelius.
And he produced this map of the Prester John Empire in Abyssinia. You can see the Nile. Here comes from the mountains of the moon, and feeds two lakes, two so-called Ptolemaic lakes, because Ptolemy had this idea, and that becomes the Nile River. Okay.
Wow.
And you can see that the interior is being animated by all sorts of information. Here is the Niger, which is supposed to be flowing. We'll see it later on into the Atlantic here to the west, when in fact it flows the other way round, of course, as you may remember.
But you know what I've noticed on most of these maps?
Benny.
What I'm noticing from the majority of these maps is most of them have a connection with Africa and what they would call today the Middle East. There's no split here.
No, but this is where the Canal of Suez is today.
Suez Canal, yes.
Suez Canal,
The man-made
right, yes.
Suez Canal.
The Red Sea, and this is the delta of the Niger here. So this is a regional map of, if you like, of Central Africa, with very little information about the Congo at that time. But some information reported from some travelers, some travelers inland. Okay, it's this map here. I should say something about the techniques. These maps are not drawn by pencil. They are engraved on copper plates.
Okay.
So the copper plate is of that size. They are engraved, and once the copper plate is engraved, it is inked. The crevices are full of ink. Paper is put into the press to roll the paper over the copper plate, and out comes a map like this, which is black and white.
Okay.
We will see most of the maps that are attractive have been colored afterwards. So they were not printed in color, they were hand colored afterwards.
Okay.
All of the maps at that time come out like this.
Okay.
So, that is Ortelius. Have you heard of Gérard Mercator?
Gerard Mercator. No, I didn't hear about it.
No?
No. But now I'm going to hear about it.
No. Gérard Mercator. He was a Flemish cosmographer. He was one who started to describe the cosmos, that is the world, not just the Earth, but also the planets and the solar system. And he started with an atlas. Unfortunately, he died in 1595 at a time when his atlas was not complete. So his grandson made this map of Africa on information which his grandfather had prepared in manuscript form. And he completed that and produced the map of 1595. It is a very, very famous map by Gérard Mercator. Mercator is the inventor of a particular projection, which it's a bit too technical, which I will not go. But you can see that it is full of interesting stuff inside, inland. If you want to take a photograph, you may, but I'll take the plastic off.
Yeah.
Would you like to take a
Yeah, of
photograph?
course.
Conference on the 7th of December. So it's already in a different room.
And who, by the way, would have made that map?
The earliest map?
Yes.
It's a man called Reger. He worked in Germany, in Ulm, and it's a Ptolemaic map also.
So
It is very, very much like the Fries maps I showed you of 1535.
Okay, so his name is Reger what?
Reger. Andreas Reger, je crois.
Andreas Reger, je crois.
The first name I can't remember. 1486.
Okay.
It's an edition of the Ptolemy's book on how to make maps.
And any birth dates? Do they have his date of birth or anything like that?
That's all in the book.
Okay.
Yeah. The names and so on. You find in the book. So here are the originals of what you saw downstairs.
Yes, no.
And you can see both parts here. They come from a book. Which is a description by a Dutchman of the travel around Africa to the East Indies and to the Spice Islands. And you can observe one thing. These maps, colored after they were printed, have suffered quite to some extent. You can see here there is paper missing. Why did the maps suffer? In the book they were folded. You can't put a large map in the book unless you fold it, of course.
Yes.
And it was folded a number of times. And the people who were reading the book unfolded the map and refolded the map and unfolded the map. And that is a great danger for the old maps, of course. Huh?
These things actually look quite Greekish. You see?
Well, it's Latin, huh?
Yeah.
In fact, no, sorry, it's Latin and Dutch.
Oh.
It's the inscriptions are here in Latin and in Dutch.
What does it say in Dutch?
Well, it describes which area is covered here and on what basis this is produced. That is to say, with the rump lines around Africa. And with information that they gathered from previous reports. So it's an interesting map. It's quite precious. And again, you can see the two Ptolemaic lakes here, with the mountains of the moon here, the mountains of the moon being fed by their streams into the lake, which make the Nile, which goes to the north.
Okay.
But what is the origin of the Nile?
The origin of the Nile, according to them, according to Ptolemy, is in the mountains of the moon.
Okay.
That is what we call the White Nile today. In reality, the White Nile exists. It comes out of Lake Victoria. We may see it later on. But there is also the Blue Nile, which comes out of Ethiopia.
Okay.
They join later on, further in the north. No? Okay.
So where would that be now today? That the new moon, the moon.
The mountains of
Yeah.
the moon.
Where would that be today? Considered.
I'll show you later.
Okay.
They are in the Rwenzori, in what is called Rwanda. I think I have.
Oh,
that.
Rwanda.
I'll show you.
Okay. Rwanda.
So, in the beginning of earlier in the next century, the French became profiled with their mapping, and this is a map by Nicolas Sanson. This is also in the book. Nicolas Sanson, and you can see that this is very much more sober. There are no ships anymore for decoration, there are no sea monsters, and there is the beginning of some kind of frontiers, outlines of kingdoms and of certain regions by Nicolas Sanson. And he was, one may say, he was at the beginning of a new approach to cartography, which became
This
scientific.
is after the Renaissance era, you mean?
Yes, in fact, this map is from 1650, but the beginning of doubts about the veracity of certain information was already starting. And in 1666 in France, the Académie des Sciences was created, and there the astronomers set to work and established new positions astronomically determined, and not just by thinking and by hearsay. They determined
So by research.
by research, absolutely, yeah. Okay.
This one was done by who? You said it was done by the French.
The French one.
Yeah, by Nicolas Sanson.
Nicolas Sanson.
Nicolas Sanson, here.
And this is all,
Nicolas
all in the
Sanson of Abbeville, of the town, the geographer of the king in Paris, at his place, and in 1650, with a privilege, a royal privilege.
Okay.
No? Okay, so it's quite a sober map until things begin to change. Now, we have seen maps of the terrestrial part of the world, of Africa. There are also maps that have been produced of the sea.
Wow.
And this is a sea chart. North is up here. This is South Africa here.
Okay.
So you might say this is up here is the Gulf of Guinea and West Africa and so on. And this is a map by a Dutch map maker by the name of here we are, Donker, Hendrik Donker,
Hendrik Donker.
1659. So we are at the end of the Renaissance here. And this is to show when you want to navigate, you have all these rum lines and these windroses to put to trace your trip for the ship.
Okay.
So it's a navigation chart, if you
Okay.
like. It doesn't show the interior. For the sailor, the interior is not very interesting. Later on, the people decided that
But do you have other like maps or of the sailor that with the interior?
no. The sea charts are always to the coast, and they show very little inland. They are for navigating on the sea. And people began to say that the maps like Sanson, they were not really very attractive. And so they filled them up again with all sorts of colors and divisions for kingdoms and areas. Ships were put in again, sometimes battles, and the cartouches, that is to say, the artistic decoration of the title and of other information became an element of art in the maps. Sanson didn't do that, but other people represented indigenous population here, indigenous people, some scenes of commerce and so on. So this is a classical map of the Dutch production of the 17th century. This is 16 let me see, 1680 about, 1680.
Okay, and these are small, like small islands?
Yes, they are small islands, yes.
Okay.
They are important because they're on the way to India, to the Spice Islands, and are, of course, dangerous to navigation, or they are important as stopover places to get fresh water and some food and to relax. Huh?
But look, like how they color this. Is there a reason also that they say like we put this green, we put this purple?
No.
Does it have a?
We don't know. The only reason for the different colors that I can think of is that by coloring different places in different colors, it is to distinguish the places. If they colored everything in the same color, you wouldn't distinguish the different areas. Huh?
Okay.
So those all these different colors is different countries.
Local kingdoms.
Okay.
You can still see the two lakes, the Ptolemaic lakes. The mountains of the moon are here, and they give rise to the Nile, which goes into the Mediterranean. Here is the Niger River, which flows into, where is it? It flows into the, here. It flows into the Atlantic, and we will see how this changes later on when we modernize the maps.
Okay.
Well, you can see the very nice decoration. People like that
At the time.
and collectors today like that too.
Okay.
Here is another map where the coastline of Africa is different, but according to this cartographer, also a Dutch cartographer, this is the way it was, although it is quite different from what we've seen so far. But who was there to contest it? The man or the person who looked at this map in an atlas would not travel, him or herself, to these places to verify this. Huh? But you must admit they are quite attractive.
Yeah.
The cartouches are quite nice with the local scenery. And there you can see the beginning of the West Indies here.
Ah, yes.
No,
Okay.
sorry, no. I'm wrong. These are the islands of. Sorry, excuse me.
But looks like St. Lucia.
No. It's no. These are of the Cape Verde. Cape Verde.
Ah, Cape Verde.
Yeah, Cape Verde Islands. Yeah.
Cape Verde Islands. Okay. Yeah.
These are the Canaries, huh? Canary Islands.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are pretty maps for collecting purposes. They are far from being scientifically established. Huh?
But do you have any information concerning the tribes that were here too, or anything like that? Because I see the Luangos. There were tribes called Luangos.
Yes.
You'd say Mandinga.
Yes, that relies on travel reports. There have been travel reports which I'm not so familiar with. There is one interesting thing here in this map, and that is you can see what we call the sources of the Nile from the two lakes earlier on. But the Nile does not continue. It does not continue. In contrast, there is a new Nile from here. And this is the result of Ethiopian missionaries who traveled to the priest King John here in Abyssinia and who discovered the source of what is called today the Blue Nile.
The priest
And
King John.
Priest John, we saw him.
Yeah.
That wasn't
before.
the guy that was supposedly fictitious.
That's right, yeah, he sat there on the throne. And since they discovered this Nile here, they decided, or they thought, that was the real Nile, and that was doubtful. In fact, the two Niles exist, of course, as we know, the White Nile and the Blue Nile. Okay. So, some maps of detail are of interest in the museum because this museum deals particularly with Central Africa, and this map maker by Johan Blau produced this one of the first detailed maps of the Congo. It's rather imaginary also because these rivers don't exist, and here you can see this kind of squiggle there was introduced in order to fill empty space. It is impossible that this is a real river system, you see?
How so?
Can you see that? Yeah.
You ask me if it's possible?
This is just for decoration.
So
it is not a real river system.
So actually,
so what is a
so
real
actually
system
this
then?
is just
Well,
blank as here.
He didn't want to leave it blank. There was people didn't like blankness on maps at that time.
That's confusion.
Yeah, well, that's the way they filled it up. This is supposed to be a real river, although it doesn't really resemble reality.
But I'm noticing there are so much little kingdoms here.
Yes, oh yes.
All little kingdoms.
Here is a trace here with names in Dutch along up the Congo, which is documented. It is a historical voyage that this man made up the River Congo. It's documented.
And these are all kingdoms leading up until where? The East?
Up
What
to-
do we call Middle East or Egypt?
No. We are in the middle of Africa here. Middle East is very, very far away.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they have no connection there. There's no connection there. And of course you can see one of the main products already of the Congo at that time, apart from slaves, were the elephant tusks. Ivory. That was an important export item from the Congo at the time already.
Elephants.
Elephants,
And who made this map?
Johan Blauw.
Johan
Blauw.
Blauw.
Yes,
Dutchman, right?
a Dutchman, yes. His father, Willem Blauw, was very, very famous, and he made very important maps, which are also in the reserves. I can't. But they're in the book.
Okay.
This is 1662.
1662.
You can see this map. You can zoom into the map in the book. And here you can see some European missionaries trying to establish Christianity in Africa, which was a very, very difficult job, because the Africans themselves were not really inclined to leave their heathen habits. But the map corresponds to what we've seen. The two lakes, here's the White Nile, the Blue Line is not there yet.
Okay, so another question was concerning the not only the African map. Did the priests and so, for example, Columbus and those guys and Amerigo Vespucci that went to America, was the sole purpose of them making understanding a map was it to be for them to go over there to convert people as well?
Well, in some respects, this was part of the objective as a justification.
Because it seems like up until this very moment, you don't hear about priests and so coming or anyone coming to Africa. You see everyone trying to figure out what happens or what the land looks like, the landscape and everything.
We mustn't forget that the Catholic Church at the time, the Pope in particular, who was very powerful in the world, had the ambition, as in Asia, they had the ambition to convert people to Christendom, and therefore there was a constant push of missionaries, as there was in the 19th century as well, to in fact also to prepare the terrain for the exploitation of the colonists afterwards.
Infect the terrain. Infect the terrain.
And to prepare the terrain, yes. If you have Africans, for example, that have been converted, and who have become Christians, they are beginning to be so-called civilized. And when they are so-called civilized, when the merchants come, they have not too much of a task to deal with them, rather than if they were wild and still shooting them with spears and arrows.
Question, you mean the Africans after, let's say, captivity?
After?
Captivity?
After? No. They were not. The missionaries didn't captivate them. The missionaries were there.
Because I asked the question because of you say they were wild people.
He's asking basically what he did was the missionaries converted them at first.
Yes.
From the what would be called so-called heathen.
Yes, exactly. And that it was not done by the missionary with power or so.
Yeah.
It was done by conviction, by talking to them, learning their language, talking to them and telling them, you must believe in our God, but your God is no good. That is the way they try to convert the people.
Yeah, like you said.
And as I say, the first Christianization was an attempt to make them docile, so that when the merchants came to do business with them, they were not so wild anymore. No, that was the idea.
They would not have defended themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
They would not really believe that they were kings or anything like that.
And do you also know maybe something about like Indian?
I know nothing about America.
Okay.
My specialty is Africa.
Africa, okay.
But you can see that parts of South America are also shown, because the missionaries are there also. But this is for Africa and special.
Okay. Here you see. Martins. Anguilla St. Martin.
Okay, there you are. Yeah, okay. So we come now to what is called the beginning of scientific cartography. And this is a Frenchman who is member of the Académie des Sciences. This is South Africa. The mountains of the moon have disappeared. The sources of the Nile have disappeared because that information was considered to be unreliable. It was not confirmed.
So basically, it's a lot of friction going on between these guys.
Well, yes.
One believes
let's
for
say
one
they didn't really go into friction because they didn't meet one another, but there were exchanges of correspondence and contestation. Sometimes they were not in agreement with each other. But Delisle was a member of the Académie des Sciences and used astronomical methods of determining positions. And so therefore he is considered to be one of the first protagonists of the beginning of scientific cartography. Madagascar here, and you can see that they are beginning to eliminate things that they consider are not true, are not justified.
So many kingdoms there. I can't believe it.
Oh yes. They are still, the kingdoms are still there. But at that time, there were some missionary travelers and others who reported in Europe, who had whose reports were used by the cartographers. And in some respects, there is some truth in what these people say.
So, let me ask one question before you turn.
Yeah.
These would be villages or kingdoms? Because I'm seeing some are red.
These would be capitals of kingdoms or of sub-kingdoms.
And these would be all cities, etc.
Yes. Cities, well, village or larger villages. I mean, towns as we know them didn't exist at that time. Larger villages. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was Guillaume Delisle, another Frenchman. So, what have we got here? Yes, this is a German map maker. The map makers in different countries had the ambition to produce atlases for their own countrymen, and they very often copied one from the other. This is of 1715, slightly later than this map here. Just a few years later, but the two Niles are back. The two Niles and the mountains of the moon are hidden there, and there is the White Nile. There is some indication of the Blue Nile, but it is not identified as that. The real Blue Nile comes out of Lake Tsana in Abyssinia, and is over here. So we're back to some imagination.
If you notice, up until all these maps, Africa is still connected to what would be called the Middle East.
No, they're not. There are maps of the Middle East, of course, huh?
No, but I mean, if you look at every map that you've showed us up until now, Africa would still be connected to what would be called the Middle East, what they would call the Middle East after they separate the Suez Canal.
Yeah, the geographical connection is there, of course,
yes.
Because of the Strait of Suez here. But details are limited to another map. To see details here, you have to look at the map of Arabia, of Syria, of Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire. And so that is why there is no colouring here.
Mm.
Yeah. You can see this white spot there?
Yeah.
That comes from a wormhole. There were worms that were eating into the paper
Oh.
many, many years ago. This is from 1715.
1715.
It's a German map, and it's all made in Latin, because Latin was at that time the language of
Dominant, yeah.
of the educated population.
Yes. Okay.
So that is by Hohmann. And now I have a very, very large map to show you. It is an example, it's an example of a map from England.
England. Wow. That's very big.
So, this is by an English map maker called Senex. And of course the advantage of a big map is that, at least in theory, it has a larger scale, and therefore there is more room for detailed information.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the Niger here very clearly goes into the Atlantic. And there is a big lake here, which is very much can be connected to the modern notion of Lake Chad, which exists there. But in reality, as was found in 1825 about, some 100 years later, the Niger really flows in the opposite direction. It flows like this. Goes here into the Gulf of Guinea. And you can see that at this time, we are in 1730, at this time, once more, the interior has been emptied, like we saw with Delil of South Africa. No lakes from Ptolemy, no mountains of the moon, and the Blue Nile is here. The other Nile has disappeared. So the Blue Nile is considered to be the Nile. So that is Mr. Senex who made this beautiful map. It's a fairly rare piece.
And this map as well is in the book, right?
This map is not in the book.
Oh, okay.
But
So if you,
except for this, all those maps are in the book.
I can't now offhand say, but many of them are, and many more are.
Can you take a picture of this one?
Yeah, surely. But, I'll take off the plastic. Wait.
Let me take some pictures too.
Real
19th century.
exploration begins with
South
Bruce
Africa.
and Brown and others, and here you have
Sudan.
the beginning of modern maps. This map is in two parts, as you can see, North Africa and South Africa. The interior middle part has been left out because that is still rather unexplored. But the South Africa, a colony has been established, and in North Africa it's the Ottoman Empire, and the coast is well known, and the parts of Egypt are very well known already. So people start to travel there. Europeans are traveling there to admire the old historical places in Egypt. And of course South Africa is a colony and is a very important place both for the Dutch and for the British.
Oh. This is by the British.
This is a British map by, what did I say? Thompson of 1821.
Okay.
And what I noticed about these maps, too, these maps would have had to been that they were kings in all of these maps, because in most of them I see it says Kingdom of XYZ,
Yes.
Kingdom of XYZ. So
Right, yes.
a kingdom is not a kingdom without a king or some royal bloodlines, you know.
Yeah. Yes, well, that was the impression that the people had, and this was the tradition how they represented these chiefs of local tribes or ethnics.
Because many of them, you know, even if you look at the Ashantis, for example, or the Nigerians, they have many kings.
Yes.
You know?
So actually, those maps actually now it's been created by only in the impact man.
Yes.
How they want to perceive it, how they want to see it.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. We are only at the beginning of what is called scientific cartography. This is from a French atlas, and although in the 19th century the maps are becoming quite sober and less artistically attractive, here is an atlas in which all of the maps are contained in a rather small frame, and they are surrounded by decorations that explain the life of the people in the area depicted, some statistics, and here especially on this are some statistics.
Morocco,
and this is for the general public. This is not a map that would be used for detailed planning of expeditions, or for example, it's a general overview map.
Especially maps for that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. This is 1840. Yes, and as you can see, the interior is rather blank still.
But what's the meaning of this? Like they say, like we say here, Algeria, and then 00 something something.
Let me just
Like 1 million something.
let me have it here and have a look. Statistique des pays les mieux connus. It must be. It is the population.
Oh, the population
It is
of
the
in
population.
the people.
It is the
Okay.
number of people living in these countries, according to what they knew at the time.
The time. Okay.
That map is in there also. You can zoom into that. Okay, so we are coming to the end of the story. In the 1870s, Stanley, you know Henry Morton Stanley, you've heard of him. He went across Africa from east to west along the Congo River. He travelled down the Congo River, and he was the first to really open up the center of Africa, and he wrote many books about it. And from that time, the Congo became a Belgian colony. And this is one of the maps of a Belgian journal in which there is an indication of the possibilities of traveling from Zanzibar here on the east coast, inland across Lake Tanganyika, reaching the Congo River and traveling down the Congo by boat, traveling down the Congo River until here, and there were some cataracts which they had circumnavigated, and then to the Atlantic coast.
Okay.
And this is the beginning of an administrative map, of which we have many more. But you can see it is a practical map. It's a factual map. It has no decorations anymore. And so we have plenty of those. But I'm not. The visits, or the results of the visits of the French scientists who accompanied Napoleon in his campaign early 19th century.
But do you have also like your book, but in a way you're talking about Egypt and so?
No.
No.
But okay, well, if we help to lift those books, can we have a look at those hieroglyphs?
I'll show you one more.
Okay.
Okay. We are running out of time a bit.
Okay.
I'll show you one more. See, these are it's still 30, it's 20. It's in a different year. You see?
Whoa.
Views of various parts of antiquities.
It was nice.
Egypt. And I suppose there are some hieroglyphs also. You see, these are the detailed studies of the architects and artists and so on.
Okay. What's this? Ain't this raw?
This is what they find.
Right, the one with a bird has a that's
Yeah, that's raw.
This is what they find in the tombs.
Oh, wow.
I think the other one is Osiris or something.
Could
Yeah.
be, yeah. You see, it's
Interesting.
quite interesting.
Yes.
These are Africans.
Quite detailed, huh?
Quite detailed, for sure.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I
documents.
find it nice.
Okay. Yeah, hieroglyphs.
Ah, yes.
Do they have any like hieroglyphs of the flood, etc.?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with
That's
that.
not your. It's above your pay grade.
I have not studied this this subject. I must admit. I'm not a specialist here.
Look nice.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll show you a little bit of the book if you like.
Yeah. Of course.
There we are. Exploring Africa with ancient maps.
Yes.
That's the start page.
15th century.
And you can read the welcome. It explains what there is, what to see, how to select, and then how to navigate in the maps, and then come the maps themselves. And you can go through the maps by century. We are here in the 15th century. These are the very old ones. 16th century. Here are some of the maps, for example. I showed you this one. This is the colored one, which I showed you, and we saw these two.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we go into one of those, for example, can you also see? Okay.
Good eyes for his age.
So you click on it and you can
You can zoom in.
you can zoom in and you can see everything
Okay.
everywhere. Okay.
I would like to buy one of these books.
Yeah, you can have it. And so we go. How do we click out here?
You gotta pin it.
You
You can pin also?
There we are. That's okay. So, and you can also, if we go back here. Okay. And we go back to the list. Okay, to the 16th century. And we can compare, for example, wait a minute. Maps. We need to go into maps here. Come on. It's a bit slow.
Yeah, computer old.
16th century. And we can compare, for example, if we select this map here, you select that one. And you want to compare this Mercator map, you see?
Yeah.
You want to compare the two. You click on the two.
Yeah, compare.
Say compare. And they will come up, both of them, side by
by
side. And you can zoom
In
into
this one and
and
the other
navigate
one.
separately.
Yes.
If you want to compare the coast, for example, here you can zoom separately, and there you have the coast. with
Okay.
the Cape of Good Hope here,
Yeah.
and the Cape of Good Hope there.
Okay.
You see, you can zoom in, zoom out as you like. Huh? It's quite nice. And so if you do that, then you take off the comparison, and you can select others. For
Other
example,
century.
the 19th century. I will show you the ones that I.
The monsters that they have on the paintings in the ocean, are they
Pardon?
based, the monsters, the sea monsters that they have in the paintings on the ocean, are they based off of accounts that
The sea monsters, yes, but the sailors pretended to have seen sea monsters, and they found their way into the maps there. This is the type of map I showed you. Here, this is the map I showed you.
Yeah. That was the last one.
Yeah, and this is the map I also showed you
Yeah,
from the
the small.
French National
Yes.
Atlas. Huh? And you can zoom into that and read all the statistics here and
Yes.
everything. So
Okay.
it's quite nice.
Yeah, you can see everything better than.
Do you read
20
French?
pages.
Do you speak French?
No parle français.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. So we also have a globe here, and so,
Okay.
so you have 80 maps, and I will show you an atlas which you can go through. There's the atlas. There is the atlas. Browse the complete atlas. Browse the complete atlas. There you can go page by page.
Oh,
And you can, if you read French,
you can
read it. And when a map comes up, the map comes up.
Okay.
And then another map comes up. And so you can read the whole atlas.
Okay.
If you wish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, first I think to understand French.
Yeah, okay. So that's the little book which came out in in 2017, and it has well quite a few maps.
Okay.
80 maps plus some atlases.
Oh.
Let's say the 18th century for a change. I must go first into maps. It's a bit slow, my machine here. Come on! Ah, there we are. Now we go into the 18th century. That should be there. No, perhaps we got stuck, I don't know.
Maybe.
What to see? Go into maps. Ah, there we are. It's coming up, it's a bit slow, yeah. Okay, and now we go into the 18th century. There we are. 18th century. I showed you...
That one?
Something like that, a religious map also.
Yeah. That's a religious map,
I showed you the whole one. This one I showed you. And, oh, no, that's another Synex, yeah. And it has some very nice pictures from atlases with descriptions, for example, like here. It will come up. There you can see you have descriptions of the life of the African. It's in French, I'm afraid, but it describes all their habits and their lives. And so, yeah, we have some wall maps also. So there we are. So you have an idea of what this looks like.
Okay.
Shalom family, Most High in Christ blessed. We are here at the Congo Museum of Africa. We just came from the bookstore, right? Where we were looking at several books concerning the maps, the ancient maps. And so as you're going to see later on in the video and in some of the pictures posted, look, no matter how much Esau helps us, no matter how much Esau talks to us family, Esau is a devil. Esau is a damn devil the Bible speaks of. The questions you will ask him many times, he will not give you direct answers. Not too long ago, we asked him about the books concerning Egypt, and he said he hadn't prepared for them. But the books were right there in front of us, and he didn't want us to see the pictures, you know. Also referred to us many times as savages, you know, heathenish, quote-unquote heathenish. But when you look at many of the maps, there are kingdoms over all the maps. There's so much kingdoms, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how much kingdoms there is. Which he refers to as towns or small cities, you know, more or less famous. But maybe you've had something that you maybe want to say concerning this matter.
Yeah, seems what we seen and when the question we ask, these people are getting nervous, you know. So just as the soldiers say just now, the kingdoms you see, the things you see on the maps, Esau is crafty indeed. He won't tell you really what's on the map. He just tell you little towns, little cities. But in little towns, little cities, it's applied to the kingdoms that is in there. So family, whatever Esau is explaining to you, he ain't gonna never tell you the truth, how things are. Shalom.
Another thing touching on it, right? Another thing touching. When you look at the old maps, you would see Kingdom of XYZ, Kingdom of XYZ. Esau would say that that's how the blacks, the so-called blacks, would have viewed themselves. not how they view us. But to have a kingdom, you have to have kings, rulers, queens. But hey, Israel, like I said, like so Jabir said, like we said earlier, you can never trust Esau. You have to filter through everything. You have to try to filter it through biblically. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom, Most High Christ bless. We're gonna hand the camera over to the cameraman himself. Let him introduce himself. Give me a sec.
Most High Christ bless. This is Soldier LNI. As you see, I was more attentive listening to what the man said. And if you see, even though you look at the man who was like giving us like what happened, which maps and things, you understand? The man looked really like a devil. The man looked like the devil. So when I ask him, I see these big books, look like a damn meter, you understand? And I ask him, what kind of books this be? He say about Egypt and stuff and this. So I ask him, can we see these books too? So he say, no, that's above my pay grade, like how the soldier said. So there is stuff in the book that he don't want to give you the information from. Even though I saw the map, it say Negro land. When I look in, I see the kingdom of Judah. Like how the soldier said also, like you see these small names and you see on the maps. You're going to see on the maps, like small, like they draw like kings and you see like with red and so, like there was like small kingdoms and this and this and this. You're going to see it. Hey, I tell you, this man is the devil, brother. Tell you straight. Because he showed a little bit of Egypt and the hieroglyphs, but he know maybe where are certain to stop. Maybe if he were to go farther, you would see the slaves there and things, you know, and all these stuff. But you know, maybe next time, hopefully with Lord's willing, next time, you know, he put that on spirit on A so that he gonna open that book or something, you know. But for now, you know, see the documentary. Shalom, Most High Christ bless.
Scream black power while Heron was pushed, but at the end of the day, nothing's in vain. IUIC has been given a vision. The tents of Judah has risen. Many has attempted the mission, minor murmuring, omitting and missing the mark. Just reading that he had the flame of fire in his eyes gave us the spark. We on Paul's mission. We out on the road, purple and gold, from Mexico, Cuba, Haiti, Ghana, Sierra Leone. 144,000 boots banging, concrete crackling. These are our men repented at heart. The scriptures is proof. IUIC, we deliver the truth.